A lot of the best fantasy quarterbacks have one game early in their career where they're so good that fantasy managers realize, oh, this is how good they can be. And suddenly it changes the trajectory of their kind of evolving fantasy value. You take someone like Peyton Manning, who seemed like a sure thing, struggled as a rookie. There's a game where, and I don't know offhand what it was, but where, he shows, oh, yeah, that glimmer of brilliance. And then it starts to build and suddenly he becomes someone you can count on your team. More specifically, Russell Wilson, his rookie year, he was, in Chicago facing the Bears. Bears were 8-3. And, at that point, Wilson had had an up and down rookie campaign. The ups were pretty good. The downs were pretty disappointing. He was a 24-year-old rookie, could have played baseball, chose football. Who knew what he was going to do? The expectation was he was going to be good, but no one knew just how good. And then against Chicago, they ended up winning. Seattle won. It was a signature win, and he scored something like 27 fantasy points. And suddenly it's, oh, this guy can be really good. And I remember it was 2 or 3 weeks later that he rushed for almost 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I remember seeing the highlights of it and going, oh, this is someone who should be on my fantasy team. Oh, wait, he's taken. Because by that point, it's too late. But that set in motion this idea of Russell Wilson being a perennial must-start quarterback for years. He was an elite or near elite quarterback. Yesterday, and going back to the week before, Trevor Lawrence may have crossed that Rubicon, where he goes from being a quarterback with potential who continually disappoints, then does something good, but then disappoints again, and that inconsistency prevents him from being someone you can just start with confidence. And over the last 8 days, he has basically done what very few others have done. He's racked up 10 touchdowns across 2 games. The record, I think, is 12 or 13. Not a lot of quarterbacks have gotten 10 or more. He's now one of them. He has a great supporting cast. And when I say supporting, obviously it's more like surrounding cast. They're not just support. Travis Etienne at his best is a great running back. Brian Thomas Jr. at his best is a great young receiver. Talked about him. A lot of people have talked about him, whether it's injury related or anything else. The point is he's not the same, but he's still a very capable, former first round pick, last year, first round pick. You got, Jacoby Myers. Suddenly Parker Washington gets, I think, more than half of the receiving yards yesterday for Trevor Lawrence. And then Brenton Strange at tight end. And whenever he's healthy next year, Travis Hunter. This has the makings of a really deep, strong, young core. Jacoby Myers is older, obviously, but this is a group that's built to go to a Super Bowl. And the missing ingredient in all this has been Trevor Lawrence's consistency, and that's may not be fair to put all the pressure on Lawrence, but he was a former number 1 overall pick, and that's deserved pressure. That's what number 1 overall picks are supposed to do. They're supposed to be transcendent talents. They're supposed to be able to elevate the players around them, just as the players around them can elevate that quarterback, but it starts with that quarterback. And if that number 1 overall pick flounders, then you're going to see a ripple effect of disappointment fantasy-wise for any player you invest in on that team, pretty much. Lawrence is now, I think he's the QB4, which is insane to think that a little over a week ago, 8-9 days ago, he was something like the QB 17. He was unstartable. And even yesterday morning, there were some people asking sit-start questions coming off his 6 touchdown performance. Hey, should I start Trevor Lawrence? He's got a tough matchup in Denver. Or do I go with this softer matchup with a lesser quarterback somewhere else? And consistently, I was recommended Trevor Lawrence. And part of that was not that I believed in Trevor Lawrence suddenly more than I did a week earlier. It was just that Denver's pass defense was overrated. They were good in spots, but they had also yielded a lot of points and a lot of yards in other games. And I felt that Lawrence and his surrounding talent were capable enough of putting up at least two scores, and that would be enough to start someone like Trevor Lawrence over a subpar quarterback in a great matchup. Lawrence did much more than that, obviously. I mean, he picked apart Denver's defense, just like he did the week before, and that gave him 10 for the 2 game span, and makes him the QB4. He has a shot at finishing the year, realistic shot, semi-realistic at least, of being the overall QB2 when this season is done. I had posed a question on the blog a year or two ago. Uh, what happens essentially when are we going to see Trevor Lawrence become a perennial elite or near elite fantasy quarterback? Because it's going to happen with almost certain, near certainty. I was that bullish about it. My problem was I was bullish too early. The same age that Russell Wilson broke through as a rookie, Trevor Lawrence was in year 3, a 24-year-old in year 3 in the NFL, and he had taken a step back. And I had thought that what he had done his second year was the new floor, and that his third year he would do even better. He didn't. And then in year 4, I was convinced he would put it all together, and he didn't. And so this year, well, I was also high on him, but I wasn't high enough. I was high on him because his ADP was something like 21 or 22. I forgot what it was, something around there. And I thought, well, no, I mean, he'll be in the mid-teens, most likely. Like, he's a bargain, probably a streamer. And if he takes a step forward, maybe top 14, but never could have expected that he would do this. Now, if he ends the season as the QB4, the QB5, QB6, if he tails off a little bit, finishes as a QB7, QB8, you could look at it and say, oh my gosh, he's a top 10 quarterback. And we all know that 2 games had an outsized impact on him achieving that. But still, those 2 games couldn't have come at a better time, more or less, for a lot of fantasy managers who desperately needed production ahead of the playoffs or in the playoffs, and they got it big time with Lawrence. So we're going to know in the next 2 weeks, I guess, whether Lawrence can maintain that great floor that most of the great quarterbacks have. It's very unusual for the greats to have single-digit performances. It does happen, but it's unusual. And so Trevor Lawrence, if he can stay out of that cellar, that awful place where, gets 1 TD and 2 interceptions and 160 yards. And it's just, you're thinking, why did I start this guy? If he can stay above water, get 15, 18 plus points these next 2 weeks, he could build on that next season. And suddenly we could look back on these past 2 games and say, this is the point where Trevor Lawrence showed what he could do, showed that he could be not just a very good quarterback, but an elite quarterback. And if you can show that, and then you can show that you're not going to be a really bad quarterback, that's what you need out of a fantasy QB. You need someone who can give you the uber points and whose floor is high enough where you're not going to get burned week after week if you make the mistake of starting them. BJ Riddell, Fantasy Football for Winners. Follow me on the blog. Email me anytime. We'll see you tomorrow.